Hi, welcome to the Jane Austen tag. I am really looking forward to doing this one. This is the official one put out a couple of years ago by the hosts, by Katie and Marissa, to be precise. I will link both of their videos down below, as well as list all of the questions. So we're just gonna dive right into this. The first question is, what is your favorite Jane Austen book? It's so hard because I love them all, but there are a standout few. I think what I'm gonna do with this question is rank instead of pick one. So first, I would say Sense and Sensibility is my favorite, which is the group read this month, but I'm not reading it because I've already reread it this year. Sense and Sensibility is my favorite. This is the one about sisters. This is the one about love between sisters, and also, I would argue, love for yourself. You have two sisters who are very, very different from each other. One leads with her passion and her heart, and one suppresses her passion and her heart. Neither of these are presented by Jane Austen as the way to go. At some point, they both have to get in touch with the other side of themselves and make some changes for their own good. Yes, there's romance. Of course there's romance. Yes, there's drama. Of course there's drama. But ultimately what this book is really about is balance and relationship to yourself, really. Like making and keeping promises to yourself that you will honor and making necessary changes, growing up, really. I love this story so, so much. And every time I read it, I think I've read it, I think this year I read it in February, and I think it was my 5th or 6th time. Every time I read it, I realize something new about myself when I read this book. Highly recommend. It's a joy. Love that one. My second favorite, I'm gonna say, and this has moved up in my rankings, I'm gonna have to say is Persuasion. Persuasion, I've often had a really hard time with. I like the story. I like the heroine. I like the love interest. I like the side characters. So what's my problem with this book? It didn't seem believable to me for a really long time. It didn't seem believable to me that that much time could pass and things could be fixed. And my most recent reread of this book, I just saw it differently. And I think that it is definitely my second favorite, if not my first favorite. Sometimes Sense and Sensibility may slide down a little bit in my estimation in comparison to this one this year. And I've reread both of these books this year, one in February, one in March, and they've both given me a different view of them. This is the one about the spinster, to use the word from my first tag, the unmarried woman who's past her prime in her 20s. And that's society saying that. That's not Jane Austen. It's just poking fun at society, but Jane Austen isn't saying that she's out of her prime. But she is past marrying age. She received some bad advice from family members who thought they cared about her, and they said, you know, don't go for this man. He's not right for you. She follows that advice and she lets him go. And it's the biggest mistake of her life, and she can't undo it. Society won't allow it, but fate throws them back together in fun and interesting ways. And they both have to come to terms with how they see each other. They both have never given up feelings for the other. She regrets what she did. She doesn't know how to fix it. He regrets how things are. He doesn't know how to fix them. And all it really takes is a conversation. Takes a bit to get to the conversation, but the conversation happens, and all is well in the end. Northanger Abbey, which I didn't conveniently have the book on these shelves, they're in the other room, so I didn't pull it, but Northanger Abbey has always been a favorite of mine. It was my first favorite. It wasn't the first Jane Austen I read, but it was the first Jane Austen I gave the title of favorite to. I really enjoy it. I really think it's fun and clever, and I really, really like it. I think it's underrated, and yeah, more people should pick it up and give it a try. My next favorite, everybody is like, where's Pride and Prejudice? That would be my next favorite, and that is the one that I am rereading right now, and I'm really having a great time. Like, as I rank these, please know that like they're all at tier 1. It's just like levels of tier 1. I really love Pride and Prejudice, but yeah, it is 1, 2, 3, 4th out of 6 on my list. It is an excellent, excellent book. Everybody wants to write the next, Pride and Prejudice. I think Colin Firth did a lot to make it to give it a power boost. But I really, really think that it stands on its own and it stands the test of time. I still remember the very first time I read Pride and Prejudice. I got it from the library. It was in a list of books in an English assignment. It wasn't what we were focusing on. It might have even just been a title that was mentioned in a standardized test or something. And I put it on a list of books that I wanted to check out from the library, and I did. I checked it out, and I almost didn't read it. It was a hardback, and it had just like a pastoral scene on it, and I didn't know what the contents of this book were, and I almost didn't read it. I was 16 or 17 years old, somewhere in there, and we were about to have to return books to the library, and so I just cracked it open and thought, I'll give it a try and see what happens, and read the whole thing in one night. And I remember thinking, does anybody else know about this book? Oh, the joys of being young and uninformed. This is pre-internet. This is the pre-email. I'm old. So I couldn't go Google or whatever. Google didn't exist yet. Google wouldn't exist for quite some time. And I had this feeling I had this secret, I had found and discovered this amazingly funny, wry, intelligent, wise book filled with these really alive characters. And did anybody else know about this? And then of course I read the rest of her books and read, discovered other people had read her books, talked about them with people. And yeah, but there was that period of time where I just felt like I had found this secret greatness. And was I the only one who knew? So Pride and Prejudice, which of course is the classic story of two people who are totally attracted to each other, but through pride and prejudice, both of whom hold both of those things within them, and both of them are motivated by those two factors. It is not a she's pride or he's pride and she's prejudice. It's not like that. Don't let anybody try and tell you that it is, not even Schmoop or whatever. It is really very much like Sense and Sensibility. It's not like one sister is sense and one sister is sensibility. They both have both inside them. So in Pride and Prejudice, they both have both inside them. They're both motivated by pride and prejudice. And it's really lack of communication, once again, that pushes this story forward. Only Jane Austen can do lack of communication and make me not hate it. I think that is the most frustrating thing to me in any novel, is when the reason things, and it doesn't even have to be romance, the reason that something isn't working is because a simple conversation has not been had, and that drives me crazy. It's funny how often that happens in my own real life that I cannot read about it elsewhere. Anyway, yeah, for how often I allow that to happen in my own life, you would think it would not annoy me so much in my literature, but it really does. Anyway, there's probably a reason why. I mean, it probably happens in everybody's life, and this is why it keeps showing up in literature, because it's relatable. But it's just down to a lack of communication, and once communication is had, happily ever after ensues. And then finally, the last two in my ranking of Austen's work would be Mansfield Park and Emma, in that order. I know, don't come at me, Emma lovers. Emma bores me. I'm really bored by Emma, like the character of Emma. I really don't like her. And I think at one point Jane Austen said something to the effect of, I've created a heroine that only I will like. And I'm surprised by how many people really love Emma. It's a great book. It's probably her most well-crafted book, sure, but I just can never get into it. I struggle, and I need to reread it because maybe I will feel differently now. I'm a different person than I was the last time I read it, so maybe I will like it more now. But for now, it's really low down there. And then Mansfield Park just feels so gray to me. It's just like meh. It's lacking the sparkle that the other books have. Probably by design. I like that it is her most like straightforward, let's attack social constructs sort of book. It's Jane Austen in her, excuse my French, badass phase, kind of tying back into or tapping back into her edginess in her, kind of tying back into her like sassy edginess in her juvenilia, but without the fun. And I don't mind the main character. Everybody's always like, I hate Mansfield Park because she's so mousy, she's so shy, she's so whatever. I like her. I do. I like her. The book itself is just missing some sparkle, and I hate to be that person because I'm all about like reading literature for its time period and not expecting it to be what I want it to be now. But I'm gonna be that person and say that the romance between two first cousins grosses me out. Even if it was okay back then, it still grosses me out. So I just prefer other books. Mansfield Park. It's got a lot going for it. It's got a lot that I don't like. Question number 2. Who is your favorite Jane Austen protagonist? So I'm going to pick a female and a male. I'm going to say my female favorite protagonist is Marianne from Sense and Sensibility. I love Marianne. She is young and whimsical and witty, and she is motivated by the most ludicrous things. And I feel a lot in common with her in those ways, but she does tap into her like stable side as well, which I too have learned to do. So yeah, I really like her. I like how stormy she is. I'm not that stormy, but I like how stormy she is. I like how she's impulsive. I like how she is really seeking to feel what she feels when she feels it, and to be true to herself and to act on her intentions, and to hold nothing back. I really like those things about her, despite what society says. Like, she gets totally attracted to and attached to the wrong person. He is a terrible person, and he does some very harmful things, breaks her heart because he's a liar and a manipulator and does not have anybody's good intentions at heart except his own. He's the most selfish character, I think, in all of Austen. Willoughby, I think, is my least favorite. He's the most villainous of villains, in my opinion, because he's not just vain. He's calculated, and he keeps picking female victims. And he keeps getting away with it. It's yucky. It's hard to read. And Marianne falls head over heels for him. And maybe he falls a little bit for her too. I like to think that he does. but he doesn't grow or change. If he grew and changed as a character, I wouldn't hate him at all. I think he's charming and he knows it. And I think that he does really want to be the kind of man who can get a Marianne, but then he doesn't do right by her. If he did right by her, it wouldn't matter at all what he had done before. Some people are going to really disagree with me on that, but really, it wouldn't have mattered at all what he did before if he did right by Marianne. I would like him, but he doesn't, so I don't like him. My favorite male character is Captain Wentworth in Persuasion. He's so stable. He's a ship's captain, and he like controls the sea. Yeah, he's just present and observant, and he gets things wrong. He does, but he's also stable. And when she rejects him when they're young, he doesn't retaliate against himself. He doesn't like punish himself in any way, like I think a lot of people do when they're rejected. He doesn't try to punish her. Even when they get reunited and he is holding a grudge against her, he's got walls up because she hurt him, right? He still treats her so well. He's respecting the boundaries that he thinks she's put up. She hasn't put up any boundaries. It's that miscommunication thing. But in that, like, he's very honorable. He's so honorable. And he's also not perfect. He's a real human, right? And you get to experience, as the reader, you get to experience his pain, and you get to see him maybe try to pick somebody else because he thinks he can't have her. And then you get to see him have just the most stable conversation with her and make things right and get everything back on track. He never was off track. Like, even in his mistakes, even in his misunderstandings, he still has her best interest at heart. He still is doing what he thinks he needs to do for both of their bests. And that's a really hard place to be in. And he does it so well. And Jane Austen does such an amazing job of writing him that way. So, love Marianne and her wild, wild ways. Love Captain Wentworth and his stable, stable ways. Love it. Absolutely love it. Question number 3. Name a book off of your shelves that you think Jane would wholeheartedly approve of, and why? So I've got 2. I think that Jane would wholeheartedly approve of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I think that because this is a love story that's not really a love story, which is Jane Austen's books. They are not romances, and she spent her whole writing career like making sure that her books were not labeled a romance, but instead were labeled a novel, because a romance meant, yeah, maybe people would fall in love, but it meant like Gothic towers and, damsels in distress. And a novel might end in a wedding. It might be a romance, but it's more about the journey than the drama. And so this, I think, is very much about the journey, not the drama. And I also think, and it's not a traditional romance. If you haven't read this book, it's not really romance at all. But romance is part of it. Relationship is a driving factor. But it's also very much a social commentary on our society now, on escapism, on how we interact with each other, on ways of communication, how communication has been broken down by technology and how it has also been built up by technology. There's a lot going on in this book. If you have read it, you're probably going, but what about blah, blah, blah? Like, there's so many things I could mention, but I think that for Jane Austen, she would really appreciate this because it is very much about human interaction, and it's very much about how trends and issues and things in collective society enhance and diminish the ability to communicate and build relationship with each other. And it is also very much about like the inner workings of ourselves. And I think Jane Austen would really, really appreciate all of that. I also pick Romantic Comedy by Curtis Sittenfeld. This is a romance that is not a romance. A novel. This is a romance that is not a romance. Yes, it is about two people falling in love, but really it's about Pride and Prejudice. It is about long separation. It is about miscommunication. It is about how two people just have to get in the same place at the same time, both mentally and emotionally as well as physically. All those things have to line up, right? And how two people make it happen. Two people who don't seem like they would be a match make that happen, and it is a match. And I think that it is a surprising story in a very polarizing way. I think some people read this book and really loved it, and some people read it and really hated it. And I think that's because the relationship is so surprising, but more so, I think it's because the way that Curtis Sittenfeld writes this, it is not like saccharine in any way, and yet it is endearing. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and I think Jane Austen would really enjoy it too. Number 4 of 7 questions. Name a book off your shelves that you think Jane would have hated and why. I had a really hard time with this one, but in the end, I went with Atomic Habits by James Clear, because I really don't think Jane would buy into self-help books at all. I think she would have no time for self-help. I think she would tell you to go read some fiction and learn from the people in the book. I think she would tell you to observe life around you and align yourself with what you see working. I do not think that she would want people to sit down. I do not think that she would sit down and read about how tiny changes create remarkable results. I just don't think she'd be into it. Question number 5. Who is your favorite minor Jane Austen character? Going back to Persuasion, I love the Crofts. I think the Crofts have such an amazing relationship. I love that she sails on his ship with him. I love just how like stable and loving they are always throughout this book. I love that they're a little bit older, and so like they've stood the tests of time. They've gone through all these things that the characters in these books are going through already, and they've done it together, and they've come out the other end, and they too control the sea, like in some way, like I love the Crofts. They are definitely my favorite. Number 6 of 7. Name a book off of your shelves that you feel was somehow inspired by Jane Austen's body of work. I'm gonna go with maybe an obvious one because it is set in the Regency. This is The Benevolent Society of Ill-Mannered Ladies by Alison Goodman. And this is set in the Regency period. It is about 2 sisters. One is, it's a little bit Sense and Sensibility. One is agnostic and a risk taker and breaks all the rules and is very passionate. She's dating Regency style, a highway robber, a highwayman, who has a heart of gold, this highwayman. But she also sees like the wrongs in society, and she goes about trying to fix them. She makes her own power within the bounds of society while pushing all those boundaries. And then her sister is very spiritual, very much ruled by logic and faith, like a combination of logic and faith, very balanced, very generous and kind, but is dying of cancer in the Regency period. And that's a fascinating addition to this story. also sees the wrongs in society and wants to right them. She does it by being supportive of her sister. They are a team, but also they have such different capabilities and such different strengths and such different areas of courage. They are both incredibly courageous women, but they have different paths of expression for that courage. And this book, you can read it and it can be light and fluffy for you, but for me, this was a very impactful book. I read this last year. It was almost my favorite book of the year. Booth definitely took that prize, but it was very, very thought-provoking, extremely well-researched. There are 3 like cases that these two try to solve with the help of the very wonderful, handsome, heart of gold, but totally off limits because of what he does, highwayman. And those 3 cases that they try to solve are actual things that happened in real life to real women. And they are horrifying things. They are really horrifying. And this is a very well-researched work of fiction that has its moments of lightheartedness and definitely its moments of like romance, like make your heart flutter romance. But also there's this like spotlight on social issues that really translate to our society today through like a lens of imbalances in power. And I just think this book has a whole lot going on for it, including its really beautiful spine. But I think this book has a whole lot going on for it, and it's definitely inspired by Jane Austen. It can't not be inspired by Jane Austen and be what it is. If you haven't read this one, it's kind of was a sleeper last year. I'm hoping that it's a series. I'm really hoping it's a series, but also it's very good on its own. Excellent, excellent book, excellent writing. Excellent reading experience. You'll learn so much, you'll feel so much, and you'll enjoy so much. So definitely inspired by Jane Austen. Finally, which Jane Austen character do you simply love to hate? Now, I've already established that Willoughby is kind of on the outs with me. Willoughby is not my favorite because he does not do right by Marianne or anybody really except himself. So I just hate him. I don't love to hate him. The character that I'm going to say for this is Wickham. Wickham, who does, although forced, does do right in the end by Lydia. And really, he's just selfish and stupid. He's not... I don't think he's evil. I think he's broken, right? He was kind of abandoned as a child. He doesn't really have a family. He never really feels like he fits in anywhere. He feels like he has to like take care of himself and take what he wants. He feels like he has to manipulate all situations in order to get what he wants. And he has some schemes and he tries some things and he's stupid, so they get thwarted. I don't think he has an intention to hurt anyone. I think he's just broken and trying to care for himself in the only way that society has taught him he can. I think he firmly believes that the only way he can get what he needs and wants is to grab it by force. 'Cause he doesn't have the wits to manipulate or trick. He tries that, right? And it doesn't work. So he has to go with force. And not all of his desires are honorable. In fact, none of his desires are honorable, but I think you get where I'm going with this. I have a level of sympathy, not empathy. I have a level of sympathy for Wickham that I do not have for Willoughby, because I believe that Willoughby is very intelligent. He's very calculated. He is a hunter of animals and women. And it's kind of the thrill of the chase for him, and also the drive to get what he needs to live the life he wants. Whereas with Wickham, it's more about meeting the deep hole, the deep well of need that he has inside of himself. Like, let's psychoanalyze him. It's like his inner child. It's like his inner child reaching out and throwing tantrums everywhere and demanding that he gets what he wants, and he gets it now. And if he can't get it now, he's going to climb up on the stool, he's going to risk his life, and he's going to steal it off the counter for himself. And he'll face the consequences later if he can't run from them. Right? He's like a little boy. And does he do a lot of damage? Yes. Does he have to be forced to do right? Yes. Does he do right? Yes. Begrudgingly. And he's stuck with Lydia. Like, that's enough punishment for anybody, in my opinion. So, I love to hate Wickham. I actually have a soft spot for Wickham. Does that make me bad? Is that the wrong move? I don't know. I have a soft spot for Wickham. Do you have a soft spot for Wickham? Yeah, I definitely have a soft spot. Anyway, this is the Jane Austen July tag. If you agree or disagree with any of my views, consider yourself tagged. I'm not going to officially tag people just because this is kind of an older tag and I don't know everybody who's done it and who hasn't. If you've not done it, or if you haven't done it in a couple of years and you are inspired either through agreement or voracious disagreement with me, go ahead and consider yourself tagged, and please do this and let me know that you've done it because I would like to watch. Alternatively, you could just let me know down in the comments if you also have a soft spot for Wickham. Do you have a soft spot? I mean, I think we need to spread a little Wickham love, really. I don't approve of his actions, but we don't need to hate him. Do we? Do we need to hate him? Anyway, I will see you next Tuesday. Let's go read Jane Austen.